Let's go! There's never a dull moment as an LSU fan, guys. You know it. I know it. Wow. Ryan Nielsen will not be LSU's next defensive coordinator. What happened? And what is Ed Orgeron going to do now? We're going to break it down from all different angles. Also, some good news. Jorge Munoz is back. Rosenthal is back. But there are two major red flags with both of them. Also, who will be LSU's next defensive coordinator? I have one name to stay away from, okay? So go on ahead, subscribe to the channel. It's a road to 4,000. Let's go. Bruce Feldman first to report. Nothing was signed pen to paper. So let's actually go through a timeline of the last 24 hours as I did here on Twitter. So it started off with Jen Slater, who is really well connected. So her reporting seemed to be pretty solid here. Reported that Nielsen informed Payton he will take the LSU job. And for the Saints to say that they were blindsided by this is crap, because this had been rumored on the internet and amongst coaches for weeks now, if not months, that Ryan Nielsen was going to be someone that Ed Orgeron was going to look at for the defensive coordinator. So for the Saints to say that they were blindsided by this, I would be very shocked. So just a few hours later, Jen Slater did report that the contract dispute from the Saints side of things started to become shaky, as in, well, I guess the Saints said that there was language in his contracts that he could not go from the NFL to the college ranks. So that seems a little weird, because I can understand that this was a freshly signed contract, but Ryan Nielsen has been with the Saints for quite some time. And as of right now, he is still with the Saints. We'll get to that in a moment. But this is where it gets really strange. So Ed Orgeron joins my buddy T-Bob every Tuesday morning on 104.5. Well, I think it's every Tuesday morning. Anyway, he just told T-Bob that Ryan is still the main candidate, and they are just trying to work out the contract details. But I'm telling you, this was not that much longer later that Bruce Feldman reported that Ryan Nielsen is remaining with the New Orleans Saints. So that is a wild 24 hours. And Brody Miller and others are reporting this as well, that this is not a case of Ryan Nielsen not wanting this job. In a lot of ways, this is his dream job. I mean, we've talked about it in all our videos that Ryan Nielsen played under Ed Orgeron and he coached under Ed Orgeron. And I'm a former defensive lineman. I still have a close personal relationship with my position coach to this day. So I wanted to add this in here from Mike Triplett. Ryan Nielsen gets a new 3-year contract with the Saints and the title of assistant head coach with the Saints. But once again, not the defensive coordinator. So, Dan Campbell was the assistant head coach before he took the Lions job. So, it's not as if Nielsen is getting a raw deal here. Now, let's go through a few LSU news items regarding two major pieces for the offense next season. Rosenthal gives us his comeback video, and this is part of the reason why you go to LSU, because they have people that could cut up really cool videos such as this one. I won't play it. You can go to his Twitter page if you want to see it for yourself. This now makes all 5 of the LSU starters on the LSU offensive line coming back next season. Also, Jorge Munoz is returning to LSU as an analyst. Ed Orgeron confirmed this yesterday to WWL Radio in New Orleans. His story, he was at Baylor last year as a passing game coordinator, decided to leave Baylor after 1 year with Dave Aranda, and now he's back at LSU, and obviously he spent most of his career with UL, okay? 10 seasons on staff with Louisiana Lafayette. Now, it's not all roses for either one of them. So Rosenthal last year was reinstated from suspension. This wasn't the first time Dare had something like this. However, number one, I've always said this. I don't like to criticize any one player too much. I don't know exactly what he was suspended because Ed Orgeron would not elaborate. He said he was going to keep that in-house. I cannot say this enough, especially at a position like left tackle where you don't come out the game, where reliability is so huge, especially with right-handed quarterbacks. And if Miles Brennan is your quarterback, he is a right-handed quarterback, you got to be there. You got to be there every day, every snap to grow that cohesion with the rest of your offensive line, which is a position that is heavily reliant on cohesion and communication. If you're not there, if you're someone that is not reliable as far as things like this are concerned, you're killing your team. Now, for Jorge Munoz, this is fascinating because there is a saying, too many cooks in the kitchen, right? You've heard that before, right? Well, LSU has DJ Mangus coming in as a passing game coordinator. Jake Peets in his first year as the offensive coordinator. Jorge Munoz was a very important part of Joe Burrow's campaign for a Heisman Trophy. So much so that LSU made sure Jorge Munoz was at the Heisman ceremony. That was the first time where we were really introduced to him. Or some people say George Munoz, so I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing his name. So it's weird because the communication may not be the same as it first was. Relating with these quarterbacks is going to be different than what it was with Joe Burrow. And on top of that, you still have Russ Callaway. So Russ Callaway, who has a strong relationship with all the quarterbacks on LSU's roster, well, I still want him to have an increased role as well. So now we have 4 major influences that 3 of them are new to the LSU equation. Now, Munoz obviously had a relationship with Miles Brennan, but still, I don't think it's too much of an issue. I like having Munoz back, but sometimes too many people involved with the process can be a negative. But I do believe this is more of a positive for LSU moving forward because this is somebody that Ed Orgeron obviously likes a lot. I like him a lot, and obviously you like him a lot. So now, back to the defensive coordinator. Who should LSU go to now? I'm going to give you my number one name, but first, one guy to stay the heck away from. But yeah, Jeremy Pruitt, no. Okay, now this report from the Dan Patrick Show further proves that Jeremy Pruitt was a disaster. Tennessee Vols got sloppy with recruiting. They were handing recruits cash in McDonald's bags when they visited campus. And they also pointed out potentially Jason Witten as the next head coach. Really? Jason Witten? But yeah, stay away from Jeremy Pruitt. Look, I feel the same way about Pruitt as I do with Derek Mason and Will Muschamp. Not only were all 3 of them not great head coaches, all 3 of them had really bad defenses and they're defensive guys. So obviously that's different than being just the defensive coordinator, where Jeremy Pruitt was a really good defensive coordinator at Alabama. But still, I would stay away. I would stay so far away from any of those 3 names. And obviously, Mason's already been scooped up by Auburn. And I would also stay away from Will Muschamp as well. But what makes Jeremy Pruitt's situation far more worse is because of, well, reports like this from the Dan Patrick Show and just recruiting violations all around. And obviously LSU, one of their many investigations that are happening right now is with impermissible benefits. Okay, one name I do want, and he is still my number one name, it's Glenn Schumann. So Georgia got a report that their co-defensive coordinator, along with Schumann, Lanning, did turn down the Texas job, and Texas decided to hire the Washington defensive coordinator. So Lanning is still at Georgia, and Schumann still does not have a defensive coordinator title. His name has been mentioned by a reporter, Glenn Guilbeau, and he is currently our number one name on our second defensive coordinator hot list. Now, there's some other names on there, and if you want to see that video, guess what? It still holds up because there's still a lot of names. You could find it down below. So if you're watching the premiere right now, I highly recommend you go rewatch our defensive coordinator hot list piece, because this Ryan Nielsen thing doesn't look like it's happening. And in that piece, you will see more names. And obviously, the discussion will continue with Corey Raymond. What should LSU do now? So here we go. Corey Raymond. Is that the guy LSU's going to roll with? You know, if you don't want Corey Raymond to be the defensive coordinator, at least hear me out on this, because I'm not so sure if I want Corey Raymond as a defensive coordinator, but none of us wouldn't want him to be the defensive coordinator because of personal reasons. This guy is LSU through and through. He's done a lot for this program. But hear me out on this. If Ed Orgeron was hiring Ryan Nielsen mostly because he has a really good relationship with him, if that was Ed Orgeron's number one reason for hiring him, and it was a major reason why he was deciding with Ryan Nielsen, then Corey Raymond falls kind of in that same boat. He has a very good relationship with Ed Orgeron. So, you know, if that's the case, and if that is Ed Orgeron's philosophy, because look, going with Ryan Nielsen, who has never been a defensive coordinator, that is very steep, especially going from the NFL to the college level. I just burped. Especially going from a defensive line coach to a secondary, or I say defensive coordinator coach, where you're having to call out coverages and blitzes and so many different things that you don't have to teach a defensive lineman to do. You know, it's steep. So, as angry as a lot of us are that Ed Orgeron wasn't able to get his guy, this very well could be a blessing in disguise, because this hire was made very much so out of bias. Let's be honest. If Ryan Nielsen did not have a relationship with Ed Orgeron, him considering Ryan Nielsen is very unlikely. How many times have you heard Ryan Nielsen's name connected to a defensive coordinator job ever? My point exactly. So this could be LSU dodging a bullet simply because there were so many unknowns. So the same unknowns that you would have with Ryan Nielsen becoming the defensive coordinator are the same unknowns that you would have deciding with Corey Raymond. There's always going to be unknowns. So it's going to be fascinating to see which direction LSU goes now, but we should all agree that there is no way of knowing what this Ryan Nielsen defense was going to look like unless Ed Orgeron is specifically asked that question, which would be a very interesting question. If you were to hire Ryan Nielsen, did you guys discuss defensive schemes? Has he ever drawn up defensive schemes for you? So, if you should have asked that question to Ryan Nielsen, the same thing holds true if you're going to consider Corey Raymond. Don't just sit down and say, hey, look, here's the job. Sit down and actually interview him the same way that you interviewed Marcus Freeman. Have him draw plays up on a dry erase board. Do all those different things before you actually make such a drastic decision such as that one. Back to the search we go. Depending on when you watch this, Tuesday night live streams, let's go. It is Power Hour LSU. Boom. Boom, boom, boom. Woo. The search continues. Hot pocket time.